Welcome to Lawyerpreneur, where we discuss the alternate paths that allow lawyers to engage their entrepreneurial spirits, connect their creativity to their careers, and distinguish themselves from others. I'm your host, Jeremy Richter. Today's episode is brought to you by Alps, who wishes the best for you in 2022 and is committed to bringing ease to insurance. Alps is the nation's largest direct writer of lawyers' malpractice insurance. That means you have direct access to your insurance team from account managers to claims attorneys. And Alps has the simplest, most straightforward online application out there. Qualifying firms can even apply, see rates, and bind coverage all in about 20 minutes. When it comes to continuing your coverage, Alps makes that easy too, with 100% online renewal. With Alps, you can spend less time insurancing and more time innovating. Get started at applyonline.alpsinsurance.com. That's applyonline.alpsinsurance.com. In addition to the corporate sponsorship that helps pay for the hosting and transcription of the show, you can support Lawyerpreneur on Patreon at patreon.com/lawyerpreneur. For less than the cost of a .1, you can help pay for the time it takes to create and edit Lawyerpreneur and receive copies of my two most recent books, Stop Putting Out Fires and Level Up Your Law Practice. Now, on to the interview. Michael Young is a lawyer doing insurance coverage and bad faith work in St. Louis, where he is a partner at Hepler Broom. He hosts Michael's Insurance Podcast and the I Love Insurance Club on Clubhouse. Michael, welcome to Lawyerpreneur.
Jeremy, great to be here with you.
All right, so let's start with this. A lot of the content that you produce where you talk about insurance and other things related to your practice field and your expertise is in audio format. So what's the draw for you toward audio content formats?
Well, I do a couple different things. I have an insurance podcast, as you say, that I try to, take a particular issue, whether it's independent counsel or bad faith claims handling, whatever it is, and spend 20, 30 minutes and really kind of get into the issues and bring in some different viewpoints and I love sound effects and storytelling. And so that format really does allows you to really get into sort of those things that you can't really maybe do in a LinkedIn post or a tweet or something like that. Conversely, the Clubhouse stuff we've been doing with I Love Insurance Club, that's just something that we picked up earlier this year. And I got on Clubhouse, I listened to it, the different rooms and things going on in there. And I just thought, my goodness, this is such an amazing format where we can get folks on and just talk about coverage and claims handling and all these different things that go on. And it's so interactive and allows people to ask questions and comments. It's really a really cool format. So those are the things I like about the audio stuff.
All right. So I expect there are people who aren't familiar yet still with Clubhouse because I think it's still fairly new. So let's talk about what Clubhouse is and how that format works. And then we can talk about your I Love Insurance Club.
Sure. Yeah. Clubhouse, it's an app. I guess it's been around for maybe a couple of years. It was just more widely available, in January, February, March of this year to a lot of more folks. It's a social media app. It's completely audio based. There's no video, really no text. And all it is are people on this app having audio based conversations, and the best as I can describe it, it's sort of like a combination of a podcast and talk radio,
Yeah.
At its very best, it's like people sitting around a dinner table having a conversation about whatever topic is of interest to them. And that's kind of what the app is. You can have a couple people that moderate the room and kind of lead the discussion, maybe a couple other people that come on the stage, as they call it, and share their thoughts. And then you have all these audience members out there who are just listening. At any given moment, they can come on the stage and share their question or comment, and they've recently introduced where you can, sort of text a question or comment to the people. So, if you're afraid to get on there and talk about things, you can still share your input that way. And it's really a neat kind of way to share thoughts on whatever topic it is. I just happen to do the topic that I love, hence the name insurance.
Yeah, so what was the catalyst for you in starting this group? I mean, to give people a background about you, you are well known in the insurance coverage space. You speak at lots of conferences, and this is your thing. So, what was the catalyst for starting a club where people go and listen to and talk about insurance coverage and those kinds of issues?
I have been posting on LinkedIn for a few years now on insurance related content. And the best posts are the ones that generate a lot of feedback. A lot of people commenting, and you can see so many times when I'll post something, there'll be conversations that don't even involve me in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that are just so passionate, if you can believe it, about insurance coverage and bad faith issues. That surprises a lot of people. But you go to a conference or whatever, and that's what people are talking about. And I just, when I heard, join this app and listen to the format of it, I just thought this is going to be another great place to do this. And instead of someone typing a comment and waiting 35 minutes for someone to respond, you can have that instant back and forth right now. And in the conversations, for the most part, when it started, were not recorded. We started to record some of them, not all of them, for different reasons. But because they weren't recorded, because it was live, it really gave some people sort of like a freedom to talk about things that they might not do in a written format, because once you write it, it's there forever. And that's not as much the case with Clubhouse, although you still have to be careful, I know. But so I just thought it was a neat place to get into those things.
Yeah, because it's a pretty small community of people who are interested in these things, and people who aren't in the insurance coverage and bad faith issue community, they don't have any interest in it. And it's a pretty limited space where you can have conversations with your peers and get into the ins and outs of it. So I can see where that would be a really big draw for people in that community to say, to have a closed space where you can come in and say, okay, here's something that we're experiencing. Are you other folks, having similar problems? What are you doing about it? Is that kind of some of what you're doing there?
I think so. Like you could put a post on LinkedIn and you may get thousands of views. And Clubhouse, certainly with what I'm doing, is not anywhere near that. Any given room that we do may have no more than 15, maybe as many as 50 people in there. Okay. So they're not huge numbers. And people say, well, Michael, why do you do it? And I say, well, because the people that are there are so engaged
Mm-hmm.
in this stuff and are so interested and do share views. And I learned so much from it. I've learned from the LinkedIn posts when people comment. It's why I love to go to conferences, is to learn from other people. And my goodness, you can really do that with this app too. So that's a lot of what we're doing.
So where does this fit, or how does it fit within the marketing and the branding that you do as a part of your law practice?
Yeah, it's funny because people don't believe this. They really don't, but it's the honest to God truth. I started posting on LinkedIn 4 years without really any inclination that this was going to help me marketing or business wise. I mean, I really did, because I was interested in insurance. I like talking about it. And I thought if I posted there, maybe other people would too. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe we could have some of these conversations. And what I've learned, though, is that in the process of doing that, you can sort of showcase your credibility and your knowledge and expertise in a subject matter. And the other people that are interested in that, other lawyers, insurance company clients, whatever, they may see that and think, hey, this person may know what they're talking about. I like them. Maybe I want to work with them. And so I think the podcast and Clubhouse are just other forums to do that. They're just places. If you're just doing them for business or in marketing, it's just a good place to showcase what you know and who you are and what you do.
And one
And
of the
and
things,
that lets people do that. And so if you're going for it just for that, now I like to learn and get to know people, and that's all. That's the reason I started it. But like it like the business stuff, it does go with it.
well, and one of the things that I like about audio particularly, as opposed to writing, because I started my law blog in 2016 and was writing about topics relevant to insurance and, things that were developing in Alabama. But what I really enjoy about podcasting and other forms of audio is that it gives people an opportunity to know you in a way that the written word doesn't. Like, I've been listening to podcasts that I've been listening to these folks talk for 4 and 5 years now. And I feel like I've never met most of these people, likely will never meet them. But I feel like I know them because I hear their voice every single week in my earbuds or in my car on the way to work. And like, I feel like I could go to dinner with those people and have a conversation without any problems because I know them. Now it's very one-sided because they don't know me. But that familiarity is available through audio in ways that it's not through other kinds of social media or even just, sending out written content. Has that been your experience as well, that through these media, you've been able to get to know other insurance folks and be more familiar with them in ways that you hadn't been previously?
I think so. I think that's particularly to Jeremy with a podcast like you're doing, where these live interviews where it's not so scripted, where people have to give answers and share their thoughts off the cuff. In Clubhouse is a lot like that too, where it is a conversation, the back and forth. I think when you look at articles or LinkedIn posts, those can be very scripted, right? Because you're sitting at your computer and I'm going to type it just right. The Michael's Insurance podcast that they do, which is more like a serial type thing where I'm trying to tell a story, that's also very scripted as well, right? Because I will write that and I will, record it and I'll re-record it because I can't stand the sound of my voice. I think that sounds stupid, or I'll stutter and I get in my head. Like, that's super scripted, but I'm doing that because I want to tell a story and get it just right. But like, you're absolutely right. Like an interview like this or Clubhouse, it's real and it's very hard to hide there.
Yeah.
And you get to learn a lot more about people. It's like going to a conference, and you're sitting at dinner, especially after the cocktails start flowing. You do get to know people a little bit.
All right. So let's talk about the podcast. So you launched your podcast in December of 2019. And back then it was a daily short form show that I think has kind of evolved over the last couple of years. What was your motivation for starting that back when you did?
Yeah, when I started it, originally, you're right. I called it Michael's Insurance Daily or something like that. And I would put out Monday through Friday, just a short little audio thing every single day. My vision for it was almost like the audio version of what I do on LinkedIn, where I tried to have a post every day or so, sometimes a couple days. And I wanted to do an audio version of that. What I discovered is that's exhausting.
Yeah.
To try to do that every single day. And I did that for maybe about 6 months. And I said, when it got to the point where I felt like I was pushing to come up with something to say, then I stopped, because that was never, the point was never to create some kind of marketing machine. It was always from the very beginning to share thoughts, such stuff I thought was important about my practice, coverage, and bad faith. And when it started to be more of a stretch, I said, we need to stop doing this because I don't want to be a phony and just make up stuff to make up stuff. And so that's when the idea of like a more of a 20 to 30 minute storytelling version, which is what I started earlier this year. And I'm going to kick up again. That became more attractive to me because then I could pick like 1 or 2 topics and really explore it and really believe in it, instead of like, hey, I went to the grocery store today and this guy was buying a ham. What's the coverage issue there? Like when you start doing stuff like that, it's over,
Yeah.
and I felt like I was getting towards that with the original one.
All right. So I also want to talk about the timing of the podcast. You launched it in December 2019. In March of 2020, and you're talking about insurance and insurance coverage issues. So March of 2020 rolls around, the whole world goes sideways, and then we start seeing articles in mainstream news about business interruption coverage and what's going to happen with insurance. And you have states who are trying to pass laws about how this insurance coverage applies and all that. You've got a platform that you created 4 months before, without obviously knowing any of this is going to happen, where you're already talking about insurance and having a platform. Tell me, what effect, because I want to talk about, I guess, this from a different angles, how that affected you and what you were doing on your show, but also the importance of marketing and branding, and sometimes how you just have, and I hate to call anything about the pandemic good fortune, but you would put yourself in a place to have this platform. So whichever of those you want to address first, we'll come back to the other one.
Yeah, it's funny because if you look at some of those insurance dailies I was doing right when this all blew up last year, I think I had an episode on like, hey, the South by Southwest conference is canceled. Isn't that crazy? Can you believe they did that? Is that going to be covered by insurance? Not knowing that that was going to be life,
Mm-hmm.
for the extended future. It was the spring of last year, as far as insurance goes, it was a very strange time because you had a lot of people who had never heard of business income or business interruption insurance suddenly were posting and talking about it on a daily basis, as if they were Billy Packer, doing the play by play or something. And it was just sort of like, huh, that's interesting. That person is talking about this. And, for someone like me who had done some, but in all honesty, not a ton of business interruption coverage, I was super interested in it because of the legal issues in the policy language. And now suddenly this language is being interpreted in a national scenario where it's super important. You have thousands of restaurants and businesses that could potentially go under, and it's going to turn on insurance coverage.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, President Trump is giving comments, from the press office there, giving his thoughts on business interruption coverage. It's like, when is the last time a president of the United States has talked about first party insurance? You don't. It was in a PNC context, it was absolutely crazy. And so LinkedIn honestly was just such a great place because everyone was sharing thoughts, the latest news. This legislature is doing this town hall is doing that, and you could get so much news and information about what was happening on LinkedIn more than almost any sort of legal news outlet. I mean, it was truly, if you wanted to know what was going on, you had to be online. And there are certain people that have continued doing that. I haven't done that as much, because I then became involved in handling some
Yeah.
of the claims. And when that happened, I thought it's just not appropriate for me to continue to be out here in a public space on it. So I kind of stepped back from that. Other people have kept doing it, and it's very interesting to see how they've continued to follow it. But it was just a time when there was so much attention on a particular aspect of insurance, and it was kind of exciting to be a part of it.
All right. So the other part is you had created a platform where you were in the right place in the right time to talk to people in that business and have people who are in that business listen to you. I mean, how has that over the last 18 months? I assume that it's had an effect on your business relationships and marketing and, people's understanding of your expertise, and you have an opportunity to exhibit that. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's been, you never know, when a new client comes to you or contact, you never know exactly where, in the chain they saw you. Sometimes they tell you, they're like, hey, I saw this post you did on this, I'm interested in you, let's talk. And then you're like, well, that's where that came from. But most of the time you don't. So it's a very amorphous to know exactly, hey, did they listen to a podcast or Clubhouse, or did they see you on LinkedIn? Sometimes people come up to me and they're like, I think I know you, but I don't know why. you know and that's usually a good thing. And so just being out there, being careful about it has gotten me a lot of attention. And I tell people we've probably gotten the opportunity to work for more new clients in the last 2 years than I did in my prior 18 years of practice combined. And so is it because of LinkedIn or these other things? I don't know exactly, but it has to be. And
Yeah.
so it's really become, a new way to get to know potential folks that would you can work with. And that was really true in 2020 when, there were no conferences for the most part. Everything was online. Even the conferences that they tried to do, online versions of them. So if you were going to meet people, it was on the computer. And it was it's been incredible for me.
How about your law partners? I don't know if y'all had conversations as you were launching these things, had the ideas for them, and addressed it with law partners or ran it by them. What has that looked like for you?
Yeah, no, I actually, I probably violated every one of the firm's social media policies by
Well, I'm
doing it.
glad I'm not the
Well, I
only
mean,
one then.
honestly, I just did it,
Yeah.
and hope that, it's funny because in the beginning, people were intrigued or amused by it. I would get comments, "Hey, Mike, you posting on Facebook again about insurance?"
Hmm.
And I don't get as many of those wisecracks anymore.
Yeah.
But no, I just kind of did it. I mean, again, I had no idea it would benefit business wise. I just wanted to talk about these topics, and then over time, I saw, I would put up a post, Jeremy, and it would get 7,000 views. I'm like, what? On the really on like eroding limit policies that got 7,000? This is insane. And then over time, people started asking us to work with them, and it blew me away. It really did.
All right. So one of the things that you're involved with is CLM, which is a Claims and Litigation Management Alliance, and you speak all the time at their conferences, which I'm envious of. Um, and how has and a lot of people join CLM or DRI or other industry organizations, but don't get involved in them. They're just like, hey, I'm a member, and that doesn't really provide any benefit. So, what kinds of opportunities has being really involved in those? And as we talk here, I think within the last week or two, you were featured in one of the magazines about getting to know you and that sort of thing. So, how has being involved given you opportunities to get in front of clients, to collaborate on projects, do presentations? How's that benefited you and your practice?
Yeah, in that feature from COM magazine you're talking about, they selected a photo of me where I hadn't shaved. I had been at the beach all day with my daughters in Michigan. I hadn't shaved. I had probably had a couple pops on the sand, and so that's the photo that they chose on me. But
Nice.
uh, I mean, CLM has been wonderful. The thing that I like about that group so much are their conferences is that they require for almost every presentation that at least half of the folks on the panel come from the insurance industry, and typically at least half of the attendees come from the insurance industry. And so the benefit of that is that it's not just a bunch of lawyers lecturing to each other. And so I go to these conferences and I'll attend other panel presentations, and I usually don't say very much because I'm so interested to hear what the different industry people say, because I can work on a case or cases for years and I get glimpses of what the adjusters and claims people think and what they experience, et cetera, that come filtered to me through the case. But you go to a conference like that and you hear so much more. And it really allows me to, I mean, that's the customer, and to hear what they think and what they experience and go through, it helps me, work for them a lot better, and so that's why I like the CLM stuff so much. The panel presentations that they do, usually they'll have at least 4 to 5 people, and it's an actual discussion as opposed to a lecture from the smart white guy in the front of the room at the podium.
Hmm.
Not there's anything wrong with that, so long as it's diverse and all that, but a discussion rather than a lecture, I get so much more out of that. I've learned so much more. And in the process, again, if you know what you're doing and people like what you say, you can pick up business opportunities from that as well. And so that's what CLM has done for me. And that's not to disrespect any other trade group out there, because there's a lot of great ones. But that's you can't do them all. But that's why I like those guys.
No, I agree. You've got to pick the one that works for you, and dive in on it. And there are dozens of them, and you can't commit the time necessary to, build those relationships at all of them. So you got to just pick what works for you. And the same is true of any other kind of marketing. You can't do podcasting and a YouTube channel and a law practice and all of the social media sites. You've got to pick what works for you. And then really the most important part for me has been sticking with it, because there's lots of people that get started with these kind of things and I'm going to post regularly or I'm going to do whatever. But most of those people fall off. Yes. And if you can be the person who sticks with it, that's when you're really able to make an impression over the course of time.
I think so. I mean, it is, if you're going to approach business through social media, it is a long-term investment in terms of time. I started doing this, I don't know what it was, the beginning of 18. And I was doing this for 6 months, getting a lot of good feedback. Not a single client approached me even remotely to talk about business until about 6 months into it. And even that inquiry didn't work out. And so it was another 3 months after that before someone really approached me and said, hey, we'd like for you to work for us. So that was about 9 months of posting day in and day out before anything so-called came of it. And that was probably fast, compared to I've heard some other folks. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. People start this, they're gangbusters, they have some very good content, and after 2 or 3 weeks, they quit. Well, it could work in 2 to 3 weeks, but it probably won't.
Yeah, that's right. Well, this has been a very insightful conversation. I've really enjoyed it. People want to find, follow, connect with you. Where's the best place for them to do that?
You can, I have my own website, michaelyoungstl.com. You can go there and find my stuff. You can also go to our law firm's website, heplerbroom.com. That's HEPLERBROOM.com. And you can find my contact info there. And I would want to mention too on Clubhouse, for the fall, I have had a co-host that has helped me tremendously with that. And it's a lawyer from Hartford, Connecticut, Kelly Petter at the Hazlitt and Donnelly law firm. And so I didn't want to not talk about our Clubhouse and leave her out, because she's brought a lot to those discussions as well.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Enjoyed it.
If you've enjoyed the show, you can support it by rating it on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is you're listening, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/lawyerpreneur. Thanks for listening.